question that we've been discussing with very important people, actually, no, just average people, is what's happening? What's going on? What now? Maybe it's too early to say what now, but here we're in a moment of pause, like the economies are all on a pause button, you know, with some exceptions who want to get back to work, who shall not be named, but whatever. And and we know that the whole system has been based on a false premise of, you know, growth maximization at any price, right? And so here we are, individually secluded, monastic even, and people are doing some interesting stuff. So as a mystic, what are you seeing? I know you've got stuff going on, which is not easy.
Excuse me. It's actually not just what I'm seeing now, but what I've been seeing since the early 90s, and it's all starting to come to the culmination. You know, and in the early 90s, I was given the dates of 2026 to 2030. And so now we're entering into the preamble of that period. And so this is, from a mystical standpoint, what I'm experiencing right now is a lot of alteration that's going on in the energetic spheres, a lot of mystical work that's being done to start working on souls in a different way. Ironically, from my point of view and from what I see, it seems like a very simple like alteration has taken place. And even though to the world it seems like, wow, this is crazy, it's really not that crazy, because what has happened here, literally what we have been trying to push literally since Our Lady of Fatima, which is what? Prayer, meditation, devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. What's happening? People have literally been forced into the isolated state where contemplation has been literally shoved down their throats. So the interesting thing is the entire world is now experiencing this as almost like it's a forced on you reality of, okay, if you're not going to engage in a spiritual practice on a wide enough scale, then there will be a correction that comes from the heavenly spheres. There is, you know, there is a balance here that has to be looked at, which also includes that when you are looking at chastisements, there's a dark element that's coming in with this as well, because this is also a chastisement for the disobedience of mankind. And so then let's go back to the plagues of Egypt in the time of Moses. So what do we know about these types of events just from biblical history? We know that God presents us with plagues and or trials until we get it, right? Okay, so simple answer to people who are listening right now: get it.
They do.
Get it.
Get it.
Yeah. And so, okay, so what's there to get? God is calling us all into an interior recollection, into an interior humbling, a humility that comes from even what Pope Francis was talking about on Friday when he did the plenary indulgence, which is that we are being forced to realize that we are vulnerable, that we are nothing without God. And that is what the purpose of chastisements that come upon humankind are, is to remind us, no, we are not in control. That these imagined controls that we have been given, they are given to us as gift, can be taken away. And so it's been taken away. on a mass scale where everyone on the planet Earth is now in a forced state of contemplation, silence, prayer, meditation. And so now what we're seeing as a result of this in the mystical spheres, what I'm seeing as a mystic, there is this great sorrowing, the great sadness, desolation, depression.
Mm-hmm.
But that's to be expected because humankind has been feeding itself externally completely for such a long time. This is a complete paradigm shift for probably 80 to 90, if not more percent of our population, where it's like, okay, I'm being forced now into a paradigm shift to go more internal.
Mm.
So if we accept that paradigm shift, which is basically that correction, ironically, you know, you're talking about the economics, and you know how in economics they talk about the corrections on the stock markets. These are corrections that occur to the energy field of life, you know? So this is a correction that's coming in to the full stream of humankind. This is what's coming into human consciousness where we have to recognize we have to do some things differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about this, you know, when we understand a virus as an expression of toxicity of the cells, if properly understood, what I see is an expression of the toxicity of an economy based on greed, the love of money, as if nature itself is causing us to awaken to what we think we already knew was true, but it causes us to now reflect on this is a kind of a viral attack on the economic system.
But
That
you know what else it also is, John, Mark? It's
you can call me John if you want. It's my third name.
okay.
Just kidding.
It's also a reflection on the energetic reality that is underflowing the current of humanity. And so, you know, a virus is not very, very different from what we experience in the energy field when we have a demonic infestation of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So compare the virus to what we've been talking about. Mystics have been talking about for centuries. I've been talking about for years, which is that when the energy is becoming infected with demonic influx, it eventually must manifest. So this virus is a manifestation of the demonic influx that mankind has chosen, accepted, and taken into their energy field. The virus is an energy, is the economy, it is the greed, it is all the vices, it is all the ways that we do not love in an eternal and proper way our fellow human beings and life in general in the way that God has designed us to do so. We've lost the honor, the respect, and you know, the higher purpose that comes with living as a human creation of God. And, you know, I pulled, ironically, from a friend of mine pointed this quote out from Socrates that I think is
Thank
really
you.
relevant right now.
Socrates in his cave. Whether, as I joke, whether Socrates actually existed or not doesn't matter. We can quote him. Yeah.
But see, what we have here, and this is really important, I hope people will listen to this because this is coming from Socrates, but this is also very much the way Thomas Aquinas would investigate reality, as well as many other philosophers and theologians. And the question what to Socrates was, why live a just life when the unjust make themselves look just, and they also make the just look unjust?
Whoa.
And this is, so given that fact, and that the unjust make themselves look just, they also reap the rewards, the financial rewards, the status. Why live a just life? And then the final answer, there's a huge dialogue about it, but the final answer is because it is the right thing to do and the right way to be, which is really the essence
Yeah.
of what we are talking about when we're talking about this energy. And so when we have created a reality, which we have,
Yes,
where
we've co-created this reality. Yeah.
we have created this, where it's not only, we need to be really honest with ourselves and with our entire community of persons, so to speak, of how we do this. There was a time in my lifetime where people would do that and it was not okay, but people would do it and get away with it. We've actually morphed to the point where it's not only okay, it's acceptable. And so what does this tell us? It tells us that in the human consciousness of mind, we have stated that what things are does not matter. What we want them to appear to be is the only thing that matters. But to God, the only thing that matters is what is actually true. And so we proceed to push out into our human world, our earthly reality, these false views, these false images, all of these things that do not reflect what or who we really are, or any kind of truth about our human condition, any kind of humility about who we are as the creations of God. And we have literally become disrespectful children of God. And what happens then, I remember a vision I had in the 1990s about this time. And I'll tell that, and then I want to explain a little bit about the sequence of the visions that I've had and what I've been told about what is happening now. In the early 1990s, I was having all these things about an end times type scenario. And, I didn't know what to make of it because, one of the things that we all, it's always important for all of us to pray that it goes another way. And we need to work towards it going another way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what we would focus on. But I remember having specific mystical experiences and visions wherein I'm taking refuge in a cave with others who we are all, barricaded in the cave, and some major world event has occurred and the people are still blaspheming God. And I remember saying to them, even in the midst of the chastisements, you still blaspheme your creator.
Yeah. Yeah.
What pride and arrogance that even in the midst of the chastisements.
I could say WTF, really.
Yes, you could. And I would concur. I would say
Idiots.
yes. What?
What?
And so, some of the essence is written in a book in the Mystic Knowledge series that I've written called Destiny and Prophecy. A lot of the visions that I had of this coming time that would all culminate between 2026 and 2030 and just beyond that. I was told that the years 2026 to 2030 will determine whether or not there is a true end of the world type event, whether that's a war or a natural disaster. It could have been a combination of those. I saw several different ways that it could come to be. So the 2026 to 2030 period was somehow going to determine how that would turn out. And it could still go either way. And so we want to remind people, we are to pray and to do works that lead humanity into a renewal and a refreshment, into an energy of goodness and truth and
Love.
authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Father Thomas Dubay, who was a great priest, passed away a few years ago, wrote a book called Authenticity, which I recommend to your
Mm.
readers, where he teaches us how the importance of the authenticity of our soul. And this
Mm.
is what this time of the virus that we're seeing is about. It's bringing out our authentic human nature. It's forcing us to reconnect with who we are as human beings, one-on-one with each other, what really matters when everything else falls away.
Mm-hmm.
it and then all of a sudden you realize what really matters, and it forces, everyone's being forced. Part of the reason we're seeing the depression, the sorrow, the extreme
Yeah.
these energies of extreme unrest is because so many people have put off this solitary need. Maybe the people who listen to your podcast are not the ones who have done this, but there's a great portion of our humanity who has. We have all been guilty of that.
Yeah. You
We've
mean the 20 listeners? Just kidding.
yeah.
Almost. It's very few,
But we have put off being in the solitude and listening to the silence. If you actually look at the words of the prophets, not just the Christian, the Catholic, but all of these other religions, faiths, tribal,
Yeah. Yeah.
etc.,
Yeah. Yeah.
it all goes back to the silence and the solitude, and the following of the sacred writings or the sacred words in spoken traditions. um, there is a procedure that's fairly simple, but in today's modern world we've made it so complicated that most people have disconnected from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now this is like, in a sense, an opportunity for those of us who needed some of that, the solitude, the opportunity for the prayer, the meditation, the contemplation, to actually bring that forth. And it will be painful because many of us are not used to doing that at all. It's a very uncomfortable place to be. But this is part of the reason, there's depression and there's despair. And it's like, gosh, I feel so, out of sorts. This is just not my thing. And that's normal to feel that because it's totally different. And, for a world and a society that lives on socialization, you are also dealing with, adjusting to that.
Absolutely.
So, but, yet we also know that it is only in the silence that we can really hear God speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take, just as all the prophets, all the mystics have always talked about, you always know that God brings forth good from every evil. We have to bring forth the good from this, what appears to be an evil, and of course is an evil, especially for those who are suffering from it. But for those who are quarantined, which is pretty much everybody, the good that's coming forth is this opportunity for that reflection, that time to actually cultivate practices that you haven't made time for in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be uncomfortable. You won't be like, wow, I just feel peaceful about this and I'm great at it. It's just, you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's new. That's part of why it's called a practice, because it is something that we do and we have to practice over and over again. We don't just become comfortable with, the deep prayer and the deep meditation and the silence overnight. It happens through that practice, and that is a continuing discipline that we engage in. And depending on how things play out, if this were to pass at some point in the near future, people can take those fruits from this time and carry it into the future, along with the things that I think many people have begun to gather, which is loving one another and caring more for their fellow man, being more aware, being more awake. Interestingly, I'm living in New Jersey right now, and it's so interesting to see, the behavior of people right before this crisis and what happens as this crisis comes upon, because people would have their heads down. They're all in they're, we're like a big anthill out here, and everyone's, just rustling around. Everyone's got their business to do, and it's all really, really important. And then all of a sudden, what happens when this happens? Everyone's face turns back up, and they notice that there are other people, and they start thinking about, I should make sure that they're okay. I should think about whether or not that person over there is lonely, or and so what happens, all this goodness and kindness and all of these altruistic thoughts are arising.
It's true, right? Our
Yes.
heads are elevated, even if we're 6 feet apart, but that's
Yes.
okay. We're still noticing that we're six,
yeah.
Which it is a fascinating, observation of, it's quite incredible.
Yeah. And that's literally, in Buddhism, they would call that the arising of these altruistic thoughts.
Right. Right.
And so we're actually cultivating these natural thoughts of caring and concern for one another that maybe we didn't pay as much attention to before. And this is where we can really grow in our own personal journey. And, there is going to be a lot of sorrow and sadness too, just because we are experiencing a huge number of people worldwide who are very sick and dying.
Yes.
And so all of us are feeling that. We're feeling the souls who are crossing over. We're feeling the souls who are terrified because they're dying. We're feeling the anguish and the sorrow of families who are losing their loved ones. So we're feeling, that's all part of the consciousness of the universal consciousness that we all belong to as humanity and humankind. And wow, isn't it interesting that each one of us feels it, even though we are all individually isolated? But that's what all of the physicists are talking about in terms of the quantum field that we all exist within. But it's also what the mystics have talked about for thousands of years, in that there is not there's not a hair that falls that God does not know about.
Right.
And as we become more aware of our neighbors, we feel these things happening to the consciousness of humanity. Even if it's not necessarily personally happening to us, we're going to feel this. And for many people like myself who are in hot spots where there is a lot of there's a lot of people dying every day here.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of my work is focused around helping souls cross over.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also a lot of work, and I would say at least equal, if not more time, going towards right now. Excuse me. The reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
This reconstruction of the energy of humankind that we have to come forth with when we come out of this. Does that make sense? Which is this humanity, this humility, this remembering who we are, and that we are nothing without God.
Yeah. You can have some water. That was brilliant. That was like 35 minutes of uninterrupted.
Sorry, you got me going, Mark. You always do.
I know. No, but it's fitting that we, our last conversation was October, before all this.
Yeah.
There was nothing. Something was going on in Wuhan, but no one was paying attention. And now we're in the midst of this. And we talked about, you said some important things in the last conversation. Was, what would St. Francis say or do? And I was thinking, the climate emergencies is now morphed into another kind of emergency. And you mentioned Socrates. So the question that, I've been discussing with people is, and I'm speaking as a systems guy, as an economist who says, there is an alternative system. There is a system that's more just, more fair. Maybe we have to go all the way back to Sumeria to pick up that thread, or the Babylonian laws, which actually were very clear about wealth distribution, uh, and forgiveness of debts, which was called the Jubilee laws later. And so we've either forgotten, I would say the Romans never practiced those either. So for over 2,000 years, we've pretty much ignored what maybe the Buddhists might say is, the right livelihood practices, right? What Socrates was referring to. So,
Exactly. That is the Buddhist right livelihood.
so one thing
Yes.
that I'm encouraged by, and I think it's kind of, in a way, I've always worked from home and kind of been monastic in that way. But I've also written about the possibilities of a new economy based on love, civilization of love. And people say, well, this is not the time, Mark. This is like, everybody's in crisis. It's like Kubler-Ross. We're suffering. We're in pain. We're sorrowful because of the lifestyle we've lost. And it's only been 30 days, or whatever. But, right away, and you can see how vulnerable the system is when cash starts to run out in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Right. And we do have supply chains that are linked up all around the world, which are going to be supremely affected.
Yeah.
And, just over the past year as well, in terms of what, not just my own mystical experiences, but what other people have shared with me,
mm-hmm.
This could be something that is leading to a period of time where we could undergo a series of difficult worldwide events. It could also pass, but this is where you go to the question that was posed to Pharaoh: let my people go. And he said no.
He said
So
no.
if we keep saying no, then it just keeps getting multiplied.
Actually, that's brilliant, because Walter Brueggemann, who was one of my first guests on my other podcast, when he said that in Cincinnati a few years ago, he stood up and he said, and I think it's in his book too, he said, we are like in Pharaoh's Egypt, and we need to leave Egypt, and it's not going to be easy, but we have to individually and collectively say no to a system that was unjust, whoever was controlling it, whoever we believe controls it, and it's in their interest to maintain the power and concentrate even further. We know how the story goes, how the story ends, so to speak, or maybe it never ends. But the question I'm asking is here we are at this most important juncture where we have an opportunity to reboot the system, not reestablish the same chess game, but build it on what Socrates talked about, what the Greeks talked about. And the interesting question, of course, we will fiddle a lot. We will, we'll never be on CNN or Fox News. Not that I want to be, but people wouldn't even listen to 30 minutes of conversation anyways. But
you'd be surprised though, Mark. There's a lot more people who
there
are.
Because there are now, right? I mean, that Yale course, so there's a Science of Well-Being and Happiness course.
Mm-hmm.
The professor is now 1.3 million people taking the course online for free. Mm-hmm. 1.3 million. But again, it's like, that's nice. Is that just a distraction though? Because these deeper reflections you're talking about is really what we're called to, I think. And so I'm trying to balance that sort of on a practical level. We do have a system alternatives to the current system of money and control. And Christ taught us the path of love. Like it was, we rejected it too a long time ago. And
yes, we have.
So nothing, in a way, nothing's changed in 2,000 years. Same Pharaoh, same systems. And we still persist because we know that there's a better way. And
it's up to us to do something about it. Like you were saying about these people who have said, well, it's not the right time. It's not the right time. I've heard that a lot too. It's not the right time. Well, you know what? It is. It's always the right time. And you know how we know this? Because people are born and people die. How does this tell us that it is the right time? It tells us it's the right time because we are shown every single day by our mortality that this is a
Mm,
temporary place. And therefore, we only have a
mm,
very limited amount of time to complete whatever we were sent here to complete. So
mm-hmm.
if we don't do it now, if we say, no, it's not for now, well, then when? You know, then when? And I think that that's
That's a
what
great reflection.
COVID-19 is
Yeah.
telling us. It's
If not
saying,
now, when, right?
it's like God saying, when,
It's
when?
showtime.
It's when has come. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But see, that's the point, because just the fact that we are born here is
Mm-hmm.
telling us it's when. It's time. It's time for this to be happening. It's time for us to be dealing with it, because that is the purpose of our earthly incarnations,
Mm.
is for us to deal with these things. So none of us wants to be accused of wasting precious earthly time.
Time. Exactly.
A human life can be a blink of an eye, and many people are experiencing this now. You know,
Yep.
any one of us, including you or me, could be gone tomorrow because of this virus.
Sure.
You know, so we want to be. So of course I listened to the Pope and participated with his plenary
I
indulgence,
was
because I want to be ready to meet my Maker. But you know, but we want to be doing that throughout our lives, because we want to always be doing this. This should be part of our life practice, which is that the consciousness of the impermanence of our mortal life here is always something that we embrace, and we work with it. You know, so we don't just go into denial and say, you know, no, I'm preparing for my future, which is my retirement in Tahiti, or you know what I mean. We're not
Wait a
doing
minute.
that.
You're crossing the line. That's my plan.
But even like with what you're talking about with the finances and the economies, well, if not now, when?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah.
You know, because the reality is there is no such thing as it's not a good time. There's only the only thing that we have is it's time
Now.
now.
Yeah.
That's all we have is right now. So if you're aware, if you are one of the lucky ones to have been made aware that changes need to be made, whether it's in your own field of work, in yours, economics, or in your own personal spiritual development, or in other people's fields of work, people who are working in science. Look at all these, a good example of this too would be the Mayo Clinic, who
Mm-hmm.
literally um, realized that COVID-19 was going to become a big deal, and they restructured their facilities to focus entirely on developing a cure,
Wow.
because they
Yeah.
knew it
They knew.
was when. It was when, and it just happened, and it's like, okay, it's time to do that.
Right.
You know, they didn't have any time to think about it either, but they realized that was when.
And they have a mastery at what they do. So
Uh-huh.
this is a big challenge. Of course you take up this challenge because that's what you're
Yes.
supposed to do. You're an expert, you're a master. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And and you see that even like in terms of as a mystic, of course, okay, thousands of people are dying. Of course, mystics around the world are going to be assisting souls in crossing over.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be insisting in processing the energies of the sorrow, the lamentation, the all these things that are happening that we're feeling, and also helping individual souls um, on a mass scale. But an economist such as yourself is pulling forward the fact, which obviously is extremely relevant right now too, which is that all of this then comes back to how our financial system will either stand or fall through these trials. And there's going to be a lot of other trials to come in the
Yes.
visions
Yes.
that the mystics are having, in the visions that the mystics have had for the past year. which were really profound, and I can only speak of those. The
Mm,
goal is to, it's not to win. It's to
mm.
preserve the light in this world.
Wow.
So if you're out there, your goal is to
Sir.
preserve your light in this world. You're not
Wow.
gonna, don't be thinking, I gotta go win this battle, I gotta win this war. You preserve your light. I wanted to read you
Wow.
something,
That's
Mark.
fantastic. Thank you.
That's what's being told to people and has been for the past year. And I have been,
Wow.
going over this stuff that has been really confusing me because I did not realize it was going to happen this fast,
Either did
Um,
I. I
so when
I was
I got
asleep at
these
the
things, I
wheel.
was like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? I'm sorry,
Hmm.
what?
I
Say
said
that again?
I was getting sleepy. I was like, how come nothing's happening? And suddenly here we are.
Boom. Yeah.
Boom.
um, well, then let me just read to you. I wanted to call me. Well, I was going to read to you this quotation here. It's from the Colburn Bible, the Book of the Briton. This is an ancient text that's kind of a Celtic text. It's kind of a new translation of a book that was just kind of recently found, translated by Marshall Masters and let me get the other translator, Janice Manning. And it says, "Tell me, good master, when shall the end be? Jesus answered, there will be an end to the beginning, and men will know this by the spirit of the times. Men will no longer be as brothers, nor will they be manly. Women will be men, and men as women. Um,
Hmm.
men, hold on. Men will not honor their homelands, and there will be no discrimination among them. Fathers will not be honored, nor mothers respected, and children will be raised to be wayward. Perversions will be encouraged, and criminals will mock the law. There will be incest and rape, and it will be unsafe to walk abroad. Floods, famines, droughts, and earthquakes will cause death and destruction. Strange sicknesses will smite the people, and there will be denial of God. Babes will be slain in the womb. Men lust after the wives of other men, and marriage shall lose its meaning. Women will go to the marriage table unchaste and with deceit in their hearts. Their husbands, creatures of pity, will hear the voices of laughing men. Priests will defile their altars with their impurity, and the rulers will be held in little repute." This is the important line.
Wow.
"It is not God who marks the end of days, but man who lives as though setting a pitfall for himself."
Whoa. So this is an apocryphal, well, I mean, this, not apocryphal, what's the word you would use for
This
this?
is a book that was kind of I don't have it with me right now. It was more of a recent find in a collection of ancient texts that contained some um, uh, ancient writings of the Egyptians that were actually around the time of the Exodus of the Israelites
Yes, with
from
Moses. Yeah.
Egypt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other set of the books were Celtic texts. Some of them were like from Scotland and areas
Interesting.
around there. And this one is particularly called the Book of the Briton, but it's from the same area. And these are just things that have recently been uncovered and recently, literally recently, just been translated.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
And so here's another so this is another quote from the Colburn Bible from the same book, the Book of the Briton. And it says, "A man asked, 'What of wisdom? Has this not been plentiful in the world since the days of the great enlighteners, of whom Solomon was deemed the greatest? Even before him there was much wisdom, yet is earth a better place for this? What has it contributed to progress? Jesus replied, "Alas, never has there been too little in the hearts of men. Wisdom is not something written in books, but that which conveyed from the book of the heart. It is a way of life. All the wisdom of the past, held in reverence by some, was easier to write than to live by. Yet following it is the only wisdom. Wisdom, however, is more than the thoughts of the wise. It is the accumulated philosophical knowledge of mankind winnowed by the wind of practicality. Nobility is an attribute of the soul, and no man has this by right of birth. Nobility demonstrates an ability to live and act according to the high principles. It is expressed in deeds, outlook, and bearing, in the manner of life and relationship with others. That which ennobles a man is his recognition of something to love and strive for outside of himself. Nobility is the subordination of self to principles.
Whoa. I love that. Nobility is subordination of self to principle. That is
Yes.
beautiful. Beautiful. Wow.
Yes. And
There's
so,
another profound reflection on principles.
go ahead.
What
Yes.
principles shall guide us?
Yes. Yes. And see, this is what it seems, I think, I had a mystical experience last night. I'll kind of summarize part of it. You know, the icons that Catholics or Orthodox Christians have that have like a fabric image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the center.
Well.
Yes. And then at the top,
Yeah.
at the top, there'll be like an ornate like frame at the top and an ornate thing at the bottom. Sometimes it has like the hanging things, you know, decorative things to show that this is something holy and beautiful. And what I was experiencing last night was endlessly searching for, I had seen that people had the top and the bottom, but the middle part, which was the Sacred Heart of Jesus, was missing. And I was desperately trying to put the Sacred Heart of Jesus back in there. I had to find it first because it was nowhere to be found. And I was trying to tell the people, this means nothing without Jesus in the center. And that's what's kind of happened to our world. It's like empty pomp and ceremony that has lost the substance and the form of its meaning. And as much as, you know, as much as our current world has really kind of like rejected and pulls back when you really come at them with the simple truth of Jesus is who he said he was. Accept it, deal with it, don't believe it at your own peril. But this is something that mystics have seen, has been shown to me innumerable times, and many others, not just me. And in the universal scheme of things, when you have extensive mystical travel, you know you cannot get past his importance in our universe and in our existence here on Earth. But it has become extremely, not only popular, but it's almost like it's well, it really is just Christian persecution, really. But if someone believes that, they're just uneducated, they're just stupid,
Dismissed, ignored,
dismissed,
derided, yeah.
And literally a lot of people will just go along with this whole idea of it's not important because that's what everyone is doing and they don't want to not fit in. But the reality is, if you throw that out, you are literally, it's like taking your own heart out of your chest and throwing it in a fire. You cannot function without the heart and soul of existence itself. So you cannot throw God away and expect things to continue to go well.
You also threw out the light.
Yes, the light.
Right? It's
And
the center.
this is what is going on right now, because with what is happening with this worldwide epidemic, this is where the remnant of the light is being called forward to preserve the light. We're not being called to go to war, to battle, because we're not going to win. We're outnumbered.
Mm-hmm.
But for anyone who's open and wants to hear, preserve your light. If you've already lost it, go back and get it. You know, whoever told you that it wasn't cool to know who Jesus is was lying. They were lying to you. And maybe they didn't know themselves, you know, so, you know, they may not have intentionally been lying to you. They just don't know. But literally, you cannot throw Jesus Christ out. If you do, you are literally throwing out the lifeblood of your existence. You cannot do that. And
could you be more emphatic?
I was going to say,
Just
I'm
kidding.
trying to get across my urgency.
Could you like get more urgent?
I can, Mark. I'm going to get more urgent now, but you know. It's
funny how we lean into the lens. No, I'm just kidding.
Leaning into the lens. Yes, you know, you cannot really overstate this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Right now, people are very comfortable, and there will be people who will hear this interview and say, oh, she's a fanatic. She's just out there. She's whatever. And, you know, they can say that. But what are they going to say when they face him themselves? They need to think about this, because this is not knowledge that has been, this knowledge has not been come by easily.
Mm-hmm.
This is a hard fought battle that I have waged for many, many decades throughout my life to find the truth. And I did not believe before I began it that this is what I was going to find out. I did not go out and prove what I believed to be true. God showed me what I did not believe to be true.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
It's important people understand that, because, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, she just, you know, she's just trying to identify, you know, that her Catholic beliefs are true. I am a convert. I converted in the year 2000 because St. Padre Pio and Teresa Newman came to me and told me it was time for me to become Catholic. After they had whipped me silly for 20 years and showed me why. And whoa. I was not planning to, that was the last place I ever expected to be or end up. You know, I studied all the world religions because I literally never even thought about studying Catholicism. I didn't think about studying Catholicism, and that was partly because when I was growing up, I was raised Mormon, and there was a negative connotation to it. So it didn't even occur to me. But as I was studying Buddhism,
I'm used to getting maligned, you know, as a cradle.
Yeah. Well, people think I'm a cradle because I am
you're so fervent. Yeah.
Yes, and they don't realize, and so I think it's important people know, no, I am not a cradle Catholic. I did not go out and prove what I already believed. I completely proved the last thing I ever wanted to believe, literally, because I studied every religion on the planet Earth.
I've seen your library.
Yes, you have.
Wow.
Yes, and so that's how it came down. So it was not a situation where I was trying to prove what I already believed. I was being shown what God wanted me to know. And so I come from the standpoint of having been humbled before God and standing before Christ and realizing he is who he says he is. And now I have to actually process and deal with, what does that mean? And how does that change my entire life and how I go about living it? And it changes everything.
Everything. And I think you said it so well last time. You said, you know, it's like a boat's coming by, and we have the choice of volition to get on or not. It's really that simple. Make the
Yes.
choice.
Yes. And, you know, it's also important to just say, because, you know, there are people out there who are not going to just become Catholic. There are people who are good Hindus and
Yeah,
Jews and
absolutely.
Muslims. And, you know, I've always concurred with what Mother Teresa would say, which was, be the best Muslim you can be the best Hindu you can be. So whatever your faith is, just be the best you can
You
be
can
at it.
be, yeah.
Love God, be devout to God in whatever your way is, and allow God to guide you. You know, in my case, God led me this way. And so that's why I ended up this way. But the reason why I think that point is very, very important, and why I'm so adamant about it, it's kind of, it always brings me back to, you know, the moment when St. Francis of Assisi was on Mount Alverna, and he's receiving the rules of the order of the
I know. Isn't it
Franciscans.
great?
Yeah, and he's like, I'm writing all these things that I don't even feel comfortable writing.
He didn't want to write them down.
Yeah. And I feel like when I do this, I say things I don't even feel comfortable saying, because I don't want to be judgmental. I don't want to be harsh. It's like something comes through me of, no, Marilynn, you've got to make it as clear to them as it's been made to you, you know, because what was given to me was a gift. And, you know, for
Yes,
those
thank
out
you.
there who hear it and are like, no, not into it, that's cool.
That's
But I
fine.
have to convey it, because
Mm.
that's, you know, that's the job that's been given to me, which is to convey it. And now that we have begun, what I will hope and pray is the first and last chastisement.
Well,
Don't
maybe
know
not.
that that will be the
Maybe
case,
not
because
the last one.
based on all the things that everyone's seeing, I think it's very likely that this could be the beginning of some hard things that might be coming, and that's
Mm-hmm.
really going to be difficult. I hope not, but we all need to be praying for peace. We need to pray for peace among peoples, among the hearts and souls of men. um, and
Mm-hmm.
think about how we literally had to have, I just thought about this the other day, because they were talking about on the news how they were trying to negotiate, uh, you know, that all conflicts worldwide would have a ceasefire
Mm-hmm.
during this crisis. And I'm like, God's mysterious ways. It's like, you know, real, you know, it's kind of like, you know, as a parent myself, I have 3 adult children, you have some adult children. And, you know, when we look at these things as a parent, and then we look at these things and think of God as Father, we're like, this is some harsh discipline, but look how far he had to go to get us to frickin' stop it.
Stop fighting. Go to your room.
Yes.
It is. It's like, go to your room and be nice.
Stop hitting your brother.
Oh, wow.
But it's a tough pill to swallow. It's a tough time, but we have to then look at, what are the corrections that it can bring to humankind,
Mm-hmm.
which we are already seeing some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to make sure that each one of us does individually, and then we try to do as much as possible collectively, is that we take those corrections forward, that we don't lose this sense of the irony of all of us being, you know, quarantined alone, yet everyone's united on the internet now. You know, we don't want to
Well,
lose that sense of community that's happened because of this. We want that to move further when this passes. We want
yeah.
people to maintain all those new qualities that had been lost before.
So
and
maybe,
bring them forward.
yeah, maybe we can end on that reflection, because
Sure.
I think what I would say is, bringing it full circle. We started with Socrates, and it's interesting because, on my shelf are lots of great theological texts and some of Plato, and
Well, before
hey,
we end, I do need to bring in one other aspect
okay,
of the Exodus that's very valid for what's happening right now.
yeah,
And it comes in because of the visions that many people have shared with me, and also what I've had myself over the past year about what is happening now. And this is to deal with the evil side of what is emerging. We
okay,
have to remember, okay, so we know that virus is disharmony in the cellular structure of the body. We know that evil is disharmony in the energetic body of
mm-hmm,
the human soul,
mm-hmm,
et cetera. You can take that out into a million different variations. We go back to the Exodus and what happened, the last plague that hit Egypt. Sorry, I'm giving you a biblical test.
oh my goodness. Do you think, look, I'm a Catholic, I never read the Bible.
It's okay, I'll take you there. Okay,
the
so
the the
what do we
locust,
have? It was the
no, the
it
blood,
was that they had to place the blood over their
right,
mantle, and it
over the
was
lintel,
that the
over the lintel.
evil,
Yeah,
remember,
it
the
would pass.
spirit of evil came over the land.
So they put it over their
This
door
is
jamb.
what is happening. The spirit of evil is coming over
Mm,
our land. Many
mm,
mystics over the last year are talking about and have seen that the spirit of evil has entered into our world.
mm,
So what are we doing? We have to preserve the light. Each individual soul has to preserve their light and the light of those around them, because this evil is coming in, and it's going to be a difficult and dangerous time. There will be treacheries, there will be dangers, there could be economic issues, there could be wars, there could be natural disasters, there could be violence. We don't know exactly how, but I'm just giving you a variety of things that I have seen and other mystics have also seen throughout just the past year. And what I have seen over the past 30 years, since the early 90s, it all culminates where we're at 2026 to 2030. And that 4-year period determines, does the earth go to a renewal, where we renew and we go to a higher type of space and we can go
mm,
higher, or do we just self-destruct and we have like this horrible war, and everything is just awful?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the way things have been moving, it could very well go that way.
It could,
It
sure.
has been a real battle. And I need to say this
Mm-hmm.
because people are always, this is something people talk to me about a lot that shocks them. So I'm going to say it again because it's important for people to pray on this. Evil can win. Evil has won and does win every single day in this world because, for one, we let it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes,
two,
yes.
because it does have a greater stronghold in our world.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we have to power against that? It's our individual light that we must preserve. We have
Mm-hmm.
to think of preserving our light. That's the strength that the masses have who are trying to preserve their light. How do you preserve your light? Because when this black force, this dark force, this evil force comes through the land and decides which houses are going to be struck, it has to do with your meditation, prayer, solitude, and communion with God. So you
And,
recognize that is how you are generating and preserving the light, through those practices. Go
I was
ahead, I'm
I
sorry.
was going to say that you know that can take the form of fear, right?
Yes.
That cloud. So it's not just like, oh, it's something we see in the movie. It's actually viscerally feeling that fear, that anxiety, that despair, right? It takes
Yes.
all those forms of, I remember reading that, and one of the things that you've basically touched on is what they, I never knew this, but there used to be 8 deadly sins, and the one was called acedia, and it was rejected. It was removed at the Nicene Council, I think. Um, and acedia means spiritual laziness or
Yeah.
sloth. And
Spiritual
so
sloth.
they said that's only that should only be relevant to monastics, sit in caves all their life and have to deal with their own temptations and the noon spirit, which is interesting. So after the meal, like you would
Right.
because you'd be sitting, it's like when you're at 2 o'clock, you're going to get that slump and you're like, oh, I'm sluggish and my digestive system is taking hold. But interesting, right? That's when they would experience that acedia. But I find it
Yes.
fascinating that we removed um, that really profound reflection, which is so important today.
That's a really, really, really good point, Mark, because and in fact, a lot of times we can actually see in, some of these things like removing that it's almost like you can almost see potentially dark forces doing that for the very purpose that we see now, which
Absolutely.
is that if you take away its importance and people don't even think about it anymore, because really,
And, yeah, and
people don't
these
think about
no.
spiritual laziness. 80 to 90% of human beings don't think about it.
Well, I was also thinking about the food we're eating. A lot of the food we're eating is Frankenstein food, or if you like. I mean, it's made us sluggish. It's actually compromised our immune systems. It is actually, which of course is what is those most vulnerable right now are those who have a compromised immune system. So isn't it
Yeah.
interesting that we've poisoned our food? We've put Roundup on everything. We've actually created a condition for acedia, right, to take hold,
Yes.
which is fascinating because if you eat, you can eat Doritos and feel like, oh, that was stupid. Why did it tasted good, but I feel really sluggish and my health, my immune system is actually under attack. So I think it's fascinating reflection that so not just our light, but our bodies and its natural immune systems need to be strengthened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do. And I think that when people realize that a lot of what they can be doing right now is just rebuilding those spiritual reserves that may have been neglected. And
Mm-hmm.
that is really that's the simple answer to what should I be doing right now. Another thing I think is important just to reiterate is that people are going to feel this despair, this desperation. They're going to feel the sorrow of
Mm-hmm.
those crossing over, the
Mm-hmm.
families who are losing loved ones. They're going to experience it themselves because a lot of people are losing loved ones or
Mm-hmm.
going through illness themselves. Um, and what people have to be very careful of right now is the spirit of suicide, which is a demonic spirit,
Yes. Yes.
which
Thank
is,
you. Thank you.
rising up, that people are going to feel this. And you have to discern that you're going to feel that from the heart of mankind and humankind. And you might even just feel compelled to be, I have many
Oh,
days where I'm just
despair.
wailing.
Of
I'm just
course.
wailing.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to remind yourself, is this my own? Is this really my own? Or is this I'm touching into what's
You
happening
know,
to all of us right now?
I
You
think
know?
that's a fantastic, important reflection because a lot of us will have that feeling, I think. Um, and we know it's probably happening, you know, a lot. But of course, we don't, we've never really been good at reporting suicides, anyways. But we know, I mean, we just saw the finance minister of Hessen in Germany commit suicide on Sunday.
Yeah.
Jumped in front of a train. Who knows, and why? Seemed like a really good man. Left two, kids behind, but I mean, and he, I'm sure, saw the vulnerability of the financial system. It's probably already toast in many parts of the world. So we
Well,
have to
and
be
it's
very,
interesting about that because we've seen that here too, and I can't really say who, but there's been really tragic. I mean, it's
yeah,
really
yeah,
tragic deaths, really tragic
Mm,
suicides,
mm.
and really tragic, really horrible. And but what we have to look at there, let's take a look at this particular individual you're talking about, is that, and this of course is kind of projecting onto him. um, so let's say he's worried that he's going to be held responsible for whatever happens to the
Absolutely.
financial market. And it's
In
like,
Frankfurt. In
is that
Frankfurt.
really what we are like as a people?
Mm-hmm.
Is that really what we would do to him? Maybe we would. And that's like something that we as a people need to reflect on, because this, of course, he had no control over. And no one, people make, and not only,
Exactly.
you know but
Yeah.
yet someone felt like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to hear the end of this,
I've,
something that's totally out of his control.
yeah.
And then there are, then you take that to the other side, which is people make mistakes, and they feel like, one of the things I've been telling a lot of people, especially young people, because I've been hearing about a lot of suicides and praying for a lot of suicides, is that there is nothing that cannot be forgiven, and there is nothing that cannot be figured out. It may not have the solution that you might be your first choice, but it can be figured out. Don't jump to that conclusion. And
Don't jump.
realize too, that whatever sorrow, whatever pain or
Yeah. Yeah.
torment, or even just desperation you may feel, is going to be exaggerated and accentuated by what all of us are feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we are touching into a lot of souls who are preparing now for very quick and unexpected death. And for those who may be facing that,
Very rough, very quick. Yeah.
we want to tell them that, first of all, that God knows who they are, and he knew who was going to live and who was going to die through these events. And that for those who are being taken at this time, they should trust that God is all over it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be okay. But that there's nothing to be afraid of. God prepares for these kinds of events. And
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thousands of angels are in wait for people.
So,
yes, if not millions, probably millions. But.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for sharing. I just want to share what keeps coming to me over the last few years is our life can and should be a walking prayer. That
yes.
What keeps coming to me is we need to live in the Lord's Prayer, which
yes.
means we immerse ourselves in thy will be done. And that we, at the end of the Catholic prayer, we say, and protect us from all anxiety as we wait in joyful hope. And so if we can immerse ourselves in that prayer, which Jesus said is the most powerful prayer he gave us, then I think we can preserve our light.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's absolutely true, that our lives should be a walking prayer.
That's coming from a hard-nosed economist. So. Well, Marilynn, thank you. That was, as always, like, whoa. This is gonna go live. It's, the other thing is I've been bold. Finally, I've decided that I posted our last one on LinkedIn because up to now I was reluctant. I have to be like, but what's coming to me, and
which one
people,
was our last one? Which one was our last one?
It was in October. We said, what would St. Francis say about the climate emergency?
Oh, okay.
Which is still totally, people can play it and go, wow, like you were spot on. You were saying, you're basically saying the same thing, but now we're getting a little more strident and bold. And we're compelled to speak. And that's what I keep getting from so many other people. This old man I just met who was inside, the financial matrix most of his life. And he sits in his little place in Portugal. He's Simbra on the West Coast. His wife is Portuguese. He's British. She's a devout Catholic Fatima woman, praying constantly, getting downloads. And like, it sounds crazy, right? Getting downloads. You know what that's like. And she says, my wife's very hard of hearing. I said, thank goodness I don't have to listen to But here she is an example. I keep ask your wife, John, what she thinks about this and that, and what she thinks about these messages coming through. And there's lots of messages coming through on whether it's 2026 or whatever. And we could talk about maybe that next time, because one of the things of, that Padre Pio envisioned or saw was these 3 days of darkness, the illumination of conscience. And whether it's
Yes.
exactly 3 days, it's almost like it's in reverse now. It's like we are inside our own darkness, inside our homes. We're not going out just so we won't get infected. But in a way, it's kind of the reverse in some ways. And yet we know things are probably going to get worse, right? There's going to be a tempest
Yeah.
out there. And so we need to, as you said, like, stay calm, stay in prayer, keep our family safe, pray for those who are dying and the souls that are passing, which you and I know how to do. You've been at this for a long time. I've too, as a cradle Catholic. I wasn't awoken until I was 1986 myself. But then it's like, you'll know what to do when the time is right. And it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, it was like, I've been working on this book, well, 2 books, but one of the books covers a lot of these visions that people have been having about over the last year about these coming times. And it's kind of mind-boggling
It
to
is, isn't it?
see
It
this
is.
just whomp. You're right in there. Now
I
it's
know.
all hits the ground.
That's right. No, you and I, I've been reading this stuff for 20 years thinking, oh yeah, sure. And we were told no one can predict the future. And it's only, it's God's grace. We just have to cling to that. I mean, it's nice to talk about dates, but I think your most important message is now. At every moment we choose love. We have to make that choice, moment, breath to breath. Because look how this COVID thing is, it will take your breath away. In 4 days, you could die and you can't breathe. You're suffocating. How horrible of a death. But then, okay, so let's take each breath with love and choose now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I kind of,
you phased out. It's like,
I was just thinking of my muffins, my little muffins, and how sad it is.
I know, but, your little dog and your little, well,
my
your
children's,
your children,
my little children's.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh well.
So, where are your daughters at? Are they at home? Or are they quarantining where they live at these days?